I've had enough of my stepdaughter, so I moved back to my parents with my son. I'm a 38-year-old female and met my 44-year-old husband about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant, only husband and I know. I have an 8-year-old son with my boyfriend who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a 13-year-old daughter from a previous marriage, SD for stepdaughter. SD lives with us every other week. When we got married, ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of SD and failed, but it was made very clear to me, by SD, ex-wife and husband, that I am not her mother and am not allowed to participate in raising her. SD basically ignored me and my son on our weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross SD and kept to himself when she was around. I suspected ex-wife behind SD's coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for SD with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years, but she wasn't having it. It got worse when ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins, 2 years ago. She started ignoring SD, trying to get my husband to have her more. We happily obliged, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like SD and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take SD full-time and try to raise her because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused this suggestion, so we continued with the every other week. The twins were born about a year ago and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse SD had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. Break our stuff. Call me a bitch if I tried to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests. She would yell at my son and she even hit him a couple of times, telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son, she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to Grandpa, late BF's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him SD needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. So she started to go to therapy, 6 months now. Other than that, my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him. And if he tried to be stern, she threw a tantrum and accused him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago, my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see Grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter, so was my late BF, so since very young age my son loved hanging with him in the garage working. Many time when he's there he came home with something they made together. Butter knives, boxes, chessboards, and for my 38th birthday last summer I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since Grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. SD made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste and he was very distraught. This was the first time, however, that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas South Dakota was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve, her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. SD was on the verge of tears standing there listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged SD the whole time and I tried to fight away my tears.